Knock, knock, who's there? Good evening. It is Wednesday, August 21st, 2021, and it is the bewitching hour to start the City Commission work session. And we have some items on our agenda tonight, but first of all, we will convene the meeting and have the roll call.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Present.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
I am also present and sitting next to Commissioner O'Donnell.
Apparently I'm lead man for the rest of eternity here.
You are the lead man for the rest of eternity. All right. So tonight on our agenda, under item number 2, under general business, we have a proposal that we have talked about a number of times at commission, and staff has been very diligent and come back with something for us to discuss. So 2A is Adaptive Reuse Building Rehabilitation Program 2.0.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to present this revised, revamped program from all the way back from 2011. And so, as you will recall, on June 11th, staff from Public Works presented the guidelines on this program, on the dormant program, and in order to help with the conversation. Now, during that conversation, those of you had a discussion, well, you had a discussion amongst yourself with regard to the direction of the program and some of the possible goals and ideas. And so you were not in agreement in terms of the age of the building. I think generally you said 50 years old. But historically, historic buildings, you weren't sure, or you didn't agree on whether or not they should be historic buildings or not. The commission members, you were concerned that there should be a requirement or a way to stipulate that if someone did not follow through on their project, that they shouldn't be rewarded for it. Apparently in the past, I'm not sure, but apparently in the past, maybe money had been provided to others, and developers or project developers didn't follow through on their projects. So that was a concern. You also pondered what would be the purpose of the program. Would it be for housing? Would it be for renovation? Would it be for general economic assistance? You also discussed that the program, that it must be for rehabilitation purposes. It should not be for new builds. And you also discussed the idea of it possibly being in the urban renewal district, just covering that area. So tonight, we're providing you a revised program based on that discussion. And the biggest difference between the initial program and the one we're presenting tonight is that this is a forgivable loan program. One whereby a project developer would get a loan at a certain point with certain terms and conditions that were pretty aggressive. And for instance, the forgivable loan would have an interest rate of about 20% and a 5-year term. But the reason for these types of terms is that you want your money back, and you want to give someone the option or the ability to refinance so that you can get your money back. So it's not designed to be comfortable. It's designed to press upon the idea that if you do apply for this program and you don't follow through on what was agreed to, it remains a loan. It starts off as a loan, However, if the developer proceeds and the project occurs as promised, as agreed to, then it converts to a grant. So that's the biggest difference with this program. The other thing is that we also included certain goals and objectives that you discussed briefly during your June 11th discussion. So in terms of goals, we want to encourage the reuse and/or rehabilitation of existing older buildings within the community. You want to enhance the local economy, increase the safety factor of older buildings, increase the assessed value of eligible existing buildings, and support projects that actually come to fruition. Objectives associated with those goals and objectives are those things that you can actually count and see and tell if you're moving toward those goals. But one of the objectives would be to reduce the number of underutilized older buildings within the community, broaden and increase the tax base, and retain jobs and/or create new ones, net new ones. Eligible expenses are listed in your packet, but generally, expenses relating to structural improvements and expansion, seismic upgrade and code improvements, hard cost facility upgrades such as new air conditioning systems and new sprinkler systems and those types of things. Also, another eligible cost would be SDC, system development charges, and then other Oregon City permit charges, and not other charges that may be charged by other jurisdictions. Only Oregon City's permit fees. The maximum loan or forgivable loan would be up to $150,000 for a term of 5 years, simple interest rate of 20%. It would be collateralized at a loan to value of 80%, and it would not be subordinated to other investors. And so those are some of the general guidelines for this type of a loan. There is a process by which a program would go through, a project would go through, and in your packet, I think I provided you a diagram of the step-by-step procedures. The applicant starts with me as Economic Development Manager, and my office would look at the eligibility, program eligibility of the project to make sure that it was eligible. If it was eligible, it would go on to the City Commission, and at this particular point, you would determine whether or not it's of interest to you. It's something that you really want to see go forward. Now, that doesn't mean that you approve of its permit process, but you simply, if it's simply of an interest to you. And then if it is, then it would go on to planning and zoning, and then permitting. After planning and zoning, it would go on to the permitting process with the building division and public works. And at that point, some individuals simply put their permits on hold because they don't want to pay them at the moment. But because they want it to go, they want to see whether or not the project will go further. But so staff and the project developer would negotiate that at that point a development agreement. And then the City Commission would see that development agreement and decide whether to approve it or not. And if the Commission approves it, it goes on to a loan review committee because they will make the loan. Because we would be looking at certain types of criteria like, for instance, someone's credit history, someone's financial statements, very intimate, very personal, very important financial statements. And then if the loan was approved, the applicant would be given the loan, and then we would see if the project goes forward. If the project goes forward and everything, and after the project is finished, and everything looks as agreed to, it converts to a grant. And if it does not, then it remains a loan. So that's the rough overview of this program. I'll be glad to take your questions.
Questions or comments or suggestions or?
have a few. In either program, the first or the 2.0, are disbursements made in lump sum? The second part of the question is simply because there was a time in the building of a home, you did what was called a construction perm loan, and it was incrementally dispersed along with the progress that you made. How are monies to be dispersed in either case, whether it be a grant or a forgivable loan? I'm the applicant, I've been awarded $100,000 in a forgivable loan. How would you disperse those monies?
In order to keep it simple and keep it straightforward, the loan would be dispersed in its entirety. So that there are a lot of accounting and bookkeeping steps and procedures one would have to go through. It's difficult to manage, and with the staff that we have, the size of the staff we have, it's easier to just provide the loan because you don't have the capacity to follow a construction loan that a bank or a larger government would be able to follow through. So it's easier to provide a loan straight up, and then they would be, if it becomes a loan, they will be faced with those terms. Now, those terms are aggressive, and as a consequence, the expectation is that they would refinance it. And chances are, at those terms, they would refinance, and you can get your money back.
I'll be honest, I disagree with the lump sum disbursement. And I don't think it's as challenging as you presented it. I mean, it doesn't have to be every 5% or every 10%. It can be 3 steps, 33%. And I mean, someone, in order to defraud the program, you'd have to be in collusion with others rather than simply you gave the money. And I mean, even if you give the money in a lump sum, obviously you're not going to follow it. The same reason you said you don't want to administer it as a disbursement according to progress. So I disagree with the lump sum disbursement. So I'll leave it. I do think there's some good controls in the program, but I also think that, it's part of me questions what is the difference between a reimbursable grant? I know what a forgivable loan is. You accomplish what you said, and the loan is forgiven. What's the term reimbursable grant mean?
Forgivable loan?
No, reimbursable grant.
Oh, well, it's a grant to begin with, and it's a grant to end up with. Reimbursable, and you mean
That's what the document says, reimbursable grant.
Well, the old program, it was reimbursable.
So is the old program abandoned altogether now?
Well, that's what we're
They took
recommending.
the best parts of it and put it in this.
That's why we.
Okay, so we only have to talk, all we need to talk about is forgivable loan.
Right.
I think what we had heard was just this concern about lending money and then having the project change along the way.
Yeah.
So the hook is, it's initially a loan that converts to a grant upon satisfaction that the agreement's been met to the satisfaction of the commission versus we give you a grant, right, and something changes and, there is no real lien against the property or, spelled out that if you change more than 10%, now all of a sudden you owe us the money back, right? I think that's what we're trying to get to through the loan, the 2.0 version.
So does the loan have a lien against the property, the adaptive 2.0?
Yes, it's collateralized.
Yes,
There's a lien.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So who is going to monitor the progress? I mean, most projects will take 6 months or more.
We would probably, much like we do, so you get planning approval, right? And you end up with 15 conditions of approval. Then they go to building, right? And they pull a building permit. Building's doing inspections, planning's doing inspections to make sure the conditions are met. I would envision something like that, right? That before you give the C of O, the certificate of occupancy, right? We're going to be looking to make sure that it's compliant with what we agreed to through that process before there's a determination to transfer it from a lien to essentially a grant.
Not being disrespectful, but we don't have the best track record on things like skylights and the wrong sidings and things like that. So it needs to be
Ironclad.
in front of it and not, it gets all done and it's like, that's not it.
That's
The
not what
money's
we-
been expended. You know, everybody loses at that point. So is there any percentage down in the forgivable loan, or is just no money down by the applicant?
It's no money down.
But they have to show they have
The ability.
the means. I think you outline that.
Yeah, I saw the credit score and such.
Yeah.
I don't know how this keeps happening, but two of the things you and I are in agreement on is that I would think that he's acting. Anyway. I think that there can be milestones or whatever we want to tag it in the development agreement that by, we agree that by this date, this is happening. By this, and so there is some check-in. So it's not like we just give you the money and we never, they never see us again. There needs to be some follow-up in the loan document and the DDA that we're going to create so that they know that there are check-in points. It seems to me, we do that with some of our other programs within Metro Enhancement. We have some check-in points, not as to the degree that is, but I think in a way I concur with you. I'm a little concerned about dispersing the whole thing. Maybe we hold out 25% as the project, they get the most of it, but then they get that last little bit. And that's when you have your, you're going through your checklist or whatever, so that there is, again, some accountability. I totally support leaning assets, whatever they may be, so that in case something happens, we have a backup system. I think that's something that we definitely should do, and we should never not do anything without any collateral like that. I think, I just, the more I think about what you said, I think holding back 20%, 25%, whatever it is, if it's 100,000, they get 75, and we hold back that last disbursement, because I think that's a carrot. It also could be looked at as a stick, but we want to look at it more as a carrot. But I think the other thing too is that, gentlemen, if you look at the urban renewal area that we have, I don't think there's a building in there that's under 50 years old. They're all older than that. And so that delineation does not bother me, because I'm looking up and down the corridor that we have, and I can't, even Mike's Drive-In is getting there. They've gotten some funding from us in the past, but I can't think of anything that's newer that would not qualify for this, because you say older building, that can be, I think it should be defined. And I agree with you, it's not for new construction. I think you meant, I think it was just a little bit of a typo. So on page 2 of 6, you have eligible expenses. I think you meant interior demolition, not internal demolition.
No, right.
Because we're talking about, possibly a TI going on there that might be utilized for. And that's pretty standard. I think everything else you have in here is reasonable. But I also agree that the things that you have that are not eligible. Now, the one thing I would ask a question is on the last bullet where you have nonprofit organizations are not eligible. What if a non-for-profit owns a building? And let's say it meets all the qualifications. Would we not be looking at them to be a part of this program?
Nonprofits.
Chart says nonprofit under certain.
Under certain circumstances.
Under certain conditions, okay. Let me get to the chart again.
Yeah, the chart's actually, to me,
Yeah.
the chart is the most informative.
Informative, yeah, I was reading the documentation. Okay, is that on? Yeah, sorry, the chart's not.
It's on,
2, evaluation program or qualifications, eligible, okay. Under certain conditions, well, what would we consider those conditions? What would you consider?
They would have to agree to pay property taxes.
pardon?
They would have to agree to pay property taxes.
I couldn't hear.
He said they would have to
Agree
be
to pay
proper.
local property taxes, so right now a nonprofit does not pay. The nonprofit owns the building.
Okay, why?
Because you want your investment you want your investment to increase, and you want those properties that you invest in on the tax rolls.
To increase the assessed value of the city. This investment is to increase the use of the building and therefore the value and therefore generate additional tax revenue over the long term.
Okay, so that may or may not have a lot to do with their ability to repay. And I'm only thinking of a situation that I helped do when I was working. It is a 501c3. They own a commercial building in Portland, and they got a loan from the agency that I was working for. They had to do the DDA, the whole 9 yards. I will have to say, I'd have to check to see whether there was any requirement about property taxes.
If they're using it for a commercial use, they're probably paying a property tax.
Well, it is their office, it is their headquarters.
Oh, so their own commercial
They
use,
own the
not,
building.
not leasing it out.
No, they own the building, and that would be the only way I would consider having a nonprofit, if they have to own the building. They cannot be tenants.
Now, in this scenario, if you agree with the goal is to put property on the tax rolls. And if you agree with that, and the nonprofit agrees to pay property taxes, they would still have to be eligible for the loan.
Right, and this nonprofit was.
Right, and
They
so
went
therefore,
through the whole loan thing.
so therefore, there's no impact.
So they did, they improved the building. It has been a catalyst for other buildings surrounding it to make improvements, which has happened. So when you say property tax, are we talking about the year that they apply for that loan, or are you talking about cumulative property tax? I mean, if we're talking about property taxes over the period of the loan, that could be detrimental to a nonprofit.
What we mean is the building is a building, and if they have to agree to pay property taxes on the building for as long as they have the building.
So is that 1 year? The year that they get the loan, they would pay, let's say they get the loan in 2024. Okay. We'd be asking them to pay the 2024 taxes, or what would be taxed?
We would be asking them to pay the property taxes the year after.
When it gets finished?
When it's finished.
Okay. Okay, well, I would say definitely define that. So that is, because I wrote down, what is that? I did not understand that.
Back to who will track, if I agree to 50-50, 50% down, 50 at that midway point, you've accomplished the first half, you're ready to go on. Who among city staff would verify that they've reached that midway point, if anyone? No one?
There's got to be somebody.
Well, no, it'd be a coordinate, it depends, right? What's going to be the trigger? They've finished the exterior of the building and they're beginning the interior work. Let's say that's the trigger, right? So we would have a team put together out of the Economic Development Department that's managing the agreement, and the DDA would work with planning and building to ensure that what was proposed has been constructed up to that point. I mean, it's going to take a team that's going to be put together if we're going to stagger the payments and what those triggers might be.
Well, I'm only doing 2. I mean, I'm not breaking it down smaller. And I would break it down according to percentage of value of the project accomplished, not interior, exterior. Maybe that was just a simplified example. There's no requirement for the recipient of this to retain possession of the building for any period of time, if I understand correctly. And there's no prohibition against flipping the investment.
That's correct.
Not where they're in the middle of the project, they can't sell, trade it, or whatever. I think
they could immediately upon completion, though. Immediately upon completion, they could sell it for a handsome profit.
Yes.
Well, the DDA needs to say that the improvements that are made through the investment needs to be for a certain period of time. I don't know if that's 5 years or that's 10 years, whatever that be, but I think it needs to be maintained for at least a minimum of 5 years after the completion of the project, so that we get a return on our investment in terms of the building being stable, in a good condition, that sort of thing. I don't think it should be, but I do like the fact that you put in there, you can't change teams in the middle of the project, because we've seen that and got burned by that pretty bad too.
Not sure how we
Yeah.
enforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but as a practical matter,
Which
4 years from now, it turns into something else, we're gonna go after somebody to get our money back?
I don't know what you mean by the something else. Talking about maintaining, maintaining the building. You know, so let's say they get the money and they do a bunch of exterior improvements.
Right.
They need to maintain the improvements in a
And if they,
condition that's not, you know, not falling apart, deteriorating or whatever.
and if they don't,
That's standard on what we did with our storefront improvement grants. 5 years they had to
and
maintain.
we claw that money back if they don't?
Well, there is some penalty for early withdrawal, as they say. Why would we want to invest in it and then have the building?
I'm not saying,
Yeah, I know.
I don't disagree, but I'm just thinking about as
How
a
do you-
practical
how you do
matter, how we enforce that, how we track all of that, and how we pull that money back.
Well,
I don't
didn't
know.
say we're getting the money back, but that could be part of it. I'm just saying, I want us to, you know, we're talking about enhancing a building or something.
I've got some questions.
Yeah, okay, there's lots of questions.
So, in terms of it becoming a loan and them having to start paying back at the 20% monthly, that would start as soon as we determine that it's going sideways, either as far as they're not performing or they're turning it into something other than what was agreed to. That's when that loan payment would begin?
Yes.
Okay. Going through I'm on the adaptive reuse, program guidelines. The project eligibility section, first sentence
Are
says
you in the
buildings.
chart or the pages?
I'm on page 2,
Perfect, I'm on page 2.
Roman numeral number 4.
Got it.
First sentence says buildings that are at least 40 years old.
Yep.
And I thought we were talking about 50.
Well, I said 50 because I know most of them are. I would bet money
Okay,
on that.
so is it 40 or 50?
Well, the reason why I put 40, because most of the buildings that are closest to the river are older, 50 years and older. But there may be other buildings in other parts of the city that might be a tad younger, and that you might want to consider them as well. It's up to you, but that was just something that I thought you might consider.
Okay, I'm all right with 40. And then it says within the legal boundaries of Oregon City, and I thought we were talking about within the urban renewal district.
I thought we were too.
Well, I guess within the legal, the urban renewal district is within the legal boundaries of Oregon City.
Yes, but all of the
Doesn't say
legal
that.
boundary of Oregon City is not in the urban renewal district.
And not all the buildings within.
If you want to confine it to the urban renewal district, it needs to say the boundaries of the urban
I
renewal
agree.
district.
I agree.
I think the intention is for the whole city. But if you want, it's up to you. If you want it to only be the urban renewal district, then we can certainly say the urban renewal district only. If you want it to be for the urban renewal district and the rest of the city, we should say that as well.
Well, I think we should start there. That's where we have the most problems.
Start where?
Start within the boundary of the urban renewal district. And then if everything looks like it's going great after year 2, we could possibly, we could change. There may be a different commissioner who could change and open it up. But that's where we have really the greatest need. If you look at the Molalla Avenue corridor, probably have a few buildings that are 40 years old, but some of them could be, let's just say, in my opinion only, they might be candidates for demolition because they're in great shape.
So then in the next paragraph, when it talks about mixed use, are a combination of retail, housing, office, et cetera, does that mean that, for instance, if there was a building that was going to be entirely retail, that wouldn't qualify?
If it were going to be entirely retail, is that what you said?
If it was entirely retail, because this says a combination of, and lists 4 or 5 different uses.
It would be a mixed use. If it's going to be entirely retail, it wouldn't. Based on the guidelines, it would not. And based on even the previous guidelines, and back in 2012, if it were all retail, it wouldn't. It would be only mixed use, housing, retail.
Our zoning definition of mixed use, because this is beyond that. I don't want to see repair and maintenance. I don't think that's particularly if it's in the urban renewal district, I don't think we want to have continued additional repair and maintenance
Right.
Yeah,
or wholesale distribution.
Yeah, I agree. I have a problem with wholesale distribution
Yeah.
also.
Would you like to target mixed-use developments, or do you think it should be loosened for standalone retail or office?
To me, if the goal of the project is to rehabilitate buildings, I don't care if it's all retail or all housing or accommodation. The point is a rehabilitated building.
Okay. Or is there
I agree with that.
Yeah, and our definition of mixed use is it's already defined in our municipal code as to what that is. So we shouldn't be doing something different.
Yeah, and it says it has to follow the code, so.
Yeah.
But if the code allows a standalone office, someone wants to rehab a 4-story building into an office, it's solely office, we're
the whole thing to be
okay
office?
with that. Yes. Yes, I'm seeing a yes.
He's asking if that sounds.
What is it currently?
What's that?
Is it currently vacant or is it currently office?
Yeah,
know.
let's say
He's
it's
just saying
currently, I'm making something up here. Restaurant on the first floor and vacant on the other 3 because they can't do the.
I think we want to encourage development in any form. What the investor chooses is at their risk, right? I mean, if they tailor it for office and it doesn't fill.
I guess the flip side is, if you want a vibrant downtown, should you have more of an active use on the first floor traditionally?
Yeah.
You're talking about uses that are activating
Correct.
the downtown.
Right.
Yes, I think that's what we all would like to see. Not everything activates the vibrancy of downtown.
Do projects get evaluated from a competitive basis as to what accomplishes the goal of invigorating downtown versus?
Not invigorating.
Well, I think, when we looked at this, right, the way it's proposed is kind of a first come, first serve.
Right.
So it wasn't like some of our competitive ones where it's like submit by March 15th.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
We're going to review. I mean, we could so that you could actually compare it to something, right? I could imagine just the way timing of development works, right? Are we going to have 4 buildings that are ready to redevelop at the same time on the same? I'm probably not going to be that way. So I think we're going to have to use kind of what whatever we end up as kind of our goals in a very subjective way. Say, do we think this meets what we're trying to accomplish? It might check off, 4 of the 5. Is that going to be good enough to approve it, right? I mean, that's really up to the commission at the end of the day.
I mean, I think I tend to agree with you. I don't want to see like we have 5 things and they meet one of them. I don't think that's the intent. I think we want to get to 5 or we want to get to 4 would be the minimum. Anything below that to me doesn't meet the intent of what we're trying to do. It's only, saying you meet this one thing, but you don't hit all the other targets. And we should just make it a win-win so that we can get the most that we can out of this expense that we're going to go through.
So do you make a statement that says competitive projects will be evaluated on the basis of their ability to
Meet these standards or goals or something like that.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yep.
But I think this is where it gets important in kind of like the discussion we're having about Stimson, right? What is even going to let somebody in the door, right? Is it a truly mixed-use development that has to have a component of office and retail or retail and residential? Or is it, or is it, if it's allowed in the zone, we're fine because we just want you to rehab the building and we don't really care what the use is as long as it complies with whatever the mixed-use downtown zone is, right? Or do we want to raise that bar a little?
I think we want to raise the bar a little bit.
I do too. I think you want to contribute to the vibrancy of the downtown area. So if you had 3 or 4 competitive projects, and I hate to make it complex, but if one scored higher than the other, they would be the the award recipient. Who does that?
But keep in mind, this is I can see that working as a grant. This is a loan program. So it's not the same thing.
I think the goal is the same. I mean,
Yeah, but
whatever you call the source of funding, the goal is to enhance the vibrancy of the area within the urban renewal.
But in order to keep it simple, it would, to pit one project against another and knowing that it's a loan, it just adds a layer on the project that would probably revisit you in ways that you would not want.
That amazes me that can make a project difficult. I mean,
I caught part of it. Did you say something to the effect of, why would you want to pit one project against another?
In a loan situation.
In a loan situation. So you have X amount of dollars, you have 5 applicants, obviously we can't fund everybody. And wouldn't we want to, as you as staff, pick the project that's going to get the biggest bang for the buck?
Well, as the city manager said himself, I mean, projects don't come that neatly.
I know, they don't come that neatly.
They don't come that neatly. I'm just trying to be realistic here.
I mean, we could set a date and say, we're not, we'll accept applications up to a certain date.
see what happens.
And see what happens. I'm not.
Well, I think you should make it rolling.
I mean, okay, but if you spend all your money on the first round, we're done.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you spend all your money in the first round, it's over, then yeah.
We haven't even.
I'm good with a cutoff date.
Okay.
There's going to be X number of competing projects by such and such a date, and if the day after that a better one comes in and the award's been made, oh well, should have been here for the show.
Thoughts?
Well, first I want to commend staff. I want to commend James for all the work that's been put into this, especially researching the other jurisdictions. I think has been really helpful. And then coming out of that with something that's different, but takes some good things from the others. I really appreciate that. I could go back and forth on the segmenting out the loan simply because I feel that the incentive is already there and that they would have to pay back the loan if they don't do it as we said.
Or as they said.
And as was approved. And so, I mean, I understand the reasoning behind wanting to do that, but I feel as though what's already included, which I think is a great scheme, if you will. I know that has negative connotations, but the way that you set it up, I really think is perfect for what it is that we're trying to get at. And so I personally feel that it's enough in order to ensure that we're getting what we invested in. Otherwise, it's coming back to us, already as written. So I don't really care about the segmenting of the disbursements. On the matter of the, what was it?
Was it the use or the timing of
Yeah.
applications?
Because one of the projects that initially prompted us to look at this was the Kanema property that was going to be strictly just, I believe, a law office. And I don't think that should be disallowed from being a part of this. On the other hand, though, when it comes to buildings on Main Street, I would like to see a mixed use incorporated into that. And so I don't know how to make it specific for certain areas and certain instances. But I mean, my first instinct is to go with mixed use. We want it to have various uses in one building. But again, thinking back to what actually prompted us having this conversation in the first place, it was that old building in Kanema that had roadblocks because of the one use that they wanted to have it. And I don't think that should be precluded.
Their roadblock was that nobody ever did a change of occupancy. That was the roadblock. That was not on the city.
Well, I'm sticking with my 50-50 because it's a lot easier to control money before it's dispersed than after it's spent and gone, and trying to recover it from somebody maybe unable to make a recovery from that party.
My experience has been the 75-25.
Well, I'm fine with 50-50. Although I have a little bit of problem with the deadline because if my project doesn't ripen in time to hit the deadline, I might have to wait 10 or 11 months
Yeah.
before the next round, and you know, financing goes sideways and costs go up and all that. So I'd hate to see us miss out on an opportunity because somebody has to wait for the next
Oh, you mean
go-round.
deadline for applying for the grant?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or-
gotcha.
Well, there's a deadline for applying, and then
Right.
we're gonna make a round of funding.
Right.
And we wouldn't make another round for another year, but my deal doesn't come together for a couple of months after the deadline. Now I gotta wait.
What would prohibit us from doing this the first round, and we have remaining funding in the amount of X, and we open up a second round? I mean,
Yeah, kind of like we were doing with the,
The grant.
activity.
Grant, yeah.
Yeah,
activity
whatever.
I
grant.
have a feeling when someone applies, they're gonna apply for every nickel that's available.
They're gonna apply for they're gonna apply for everything that's available.
Just guessing.
Yeah, they're not gonna apply for,
I mean, unless we.
$5,000.
Right, I mean, that'd be my only,
well, it's not a
Caveat.
financially rich program. I mean, it's
no, that's what I mean, I think
300,000 allocated.
it's gonna amaze, the money will go very quickly. If there's an
Yeah,
actual
I don't care if somebody
substantive
wants to apply for the whole kit
project.
and caboodle.
Well, again, publication and making public aware is where it starts, right? And you want to make sure your potential applicants are aware of the program before, if we're going to have a deadline date. I don't care which way we do it. Just want to get, like, as the mayor said, the most bang for the buck.
So do we have a consensus on 40?
What's 40?
The age of the builders, or 50?
I'm fine with whatever you want.
That's fine. Yeah.
40's fine,
40's fine.
expands the eligibility.
But still constrained within the urban renewal district.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just one little point of clarification on the diagram at the bottom. If when it's a grant, it says project complete compliant. On the funding remains a loan side, it just says project complete. It probably should say non-compliant.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're on the other side.
Yeah, because I didn't understand, okay, well, it's complete, how come it's a loan? Oh, it's because it's non-compliant, but it doesn't say that. So just add non-compliant.
Yeah, and on your chart, I think one of the things we would want to try to do is try to streamline as much as we could the middle section before it says city staff and project developer, and then yes to city commission. Obviously, we have a fantastic pre-app process where a person comes in and they get to find out everything that they need to know up front before they embark on it, and hopefully they will tell us everything, because sometimes we don't get that information. We should be a little more aggressive about getting that information because their project will depend on it. They don't tell us, and then we find out later, that's so bad. So I was just trying to, I wrote in my margin here, does project meet, I think you mean commission, did you mean commission goals or commission something there? You had, does project meet commission? So I don't know what that means. Then you have yes, planning, yes, then you go down to permitting. So somewhere in there is the pre-app.
Exactly, it's all built in. I mean, I didn't want to take every little tiny little step.
I know.
This is like a 30,000 foot view down.
But you got to remember, it's a process. It's a process. So what did you mean under the first big square box? City Commission project meets interest, project of interest, does project meet, did you mean commission goals?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, that in itself is an evaluation process.
Exactly.
And what does the next box say?
The box
That's
is
planning.
It kind of slid down a little bit. It says planning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's planning. So like I said, in between that, hopefully they'll smart enough, they're going to go for pre-app, so that way they get that information.
So what is the commission's pleasure on the disbursement of funds?
So what is your thought, Mike?
I'm fine with 50-50.
Adam?
What was your, what did you say?
Mine was 75% gets dispersed and 25 is a holdback.
Okay.
Project,
What does everybody else think?
project gets moved forward.
I could live with either one.
They get the last 25% when we can check lots of boxes, and my experience has been that's worked fairly well. 50-50 to me is a little bit constraining.
What's the difference for staff?
I mean, we're recording a second loan, so I don't think it matters.
Either way.
It's just one additional checkpoint, right? Whether it's 50-50 or 75-25. Whatever is the pleasure of the commission. I'm at 50-50, and whatever it comes out, it comes out.
Better tell them something. I think that they need to get some of that money. So if it's 100,000, 50,000, well, maybe.
I think midpoint's fine. I mean, not that the 50-50 would be the exact midpoint, but
It's not necessarily a midpoint.
But when I think about it, right, they're gonna get 50% upfront, right? When they pull the building permit and they start breaking ground, okay? When I think about it, right? Because they need the money, it's part of their portfolio,
They
part of
need more
their,
money up
how they're gonna build it, right? And then they're gonna hit another phase. Let's just
then
say,
what?
then they're gonna hit another trigger, okay?
Well, probably for them, around 30%, they start queuing you in, and they're gonna be needing the other funds released.
Right, so then we release the other 50%, so they have 100%, we record the second loan, right? But they're still building the building. We're not holding it till the C of O at the
they're
end.
rebuilding
Because
now.
it's operating capital for them to either pay bills
Yeah, we're not.
by HVAC, right? So we're all good with that part, correct? That the money will be distributed before the building's finished.
Yeah, it just
Okay.
minimizes your exposure.
Okay.
And do we also have consensus that we're not going to include repair, maintenance, and wholesale distribution?
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
There was something else I was going to ask you about the loan process, and I thought I wrote it down.
Well, we'll see this in a regular meeting, right?
Yeah. So
I
then
mean, I'm not sure how to get around Commissioner Marl's, single use, okay, somewhere, but I really want
Yeah.
multi-use on Main Street. Maybe it
Yeah.
is, maybe the desire is a multi-use building,
is the first priority?
and the applicant makes the case why a single use
Yeah.
is the goal.
The exception.
I don't know how, I'm not sure
They
how
have
else
an
we could
exception why.
word something.
Yeah.
There's too many variables, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And there could be a really great single use, right, that we haven't
Right,
thought of
right.
in a 2 or 3 story building versus, our desire though is a multi-use that activates, especially on our downtown
think that's
core,
fine.
that first floor. Is that fair enough to
Yes,
say?
that's,
I think
yeah.
that gets to what I was saying, yeah.
It becomes a nebulous phrase like contributing to the vibrancy of the downtown area.
But I think if we're more clear, like our priority is an activated
Yeah.
pedestrian
Right.
environment.
Right. Yeah. So then,
The bar is higher if you're gonna do something that doesn't do that.
so
Yeah.
the 20%. So I've not kept up with my friends at Marketplace knowing where the interest rates are today. Is that,
Oh, that's extremely high. It's the incentive.
incentive? Okay.
We are not a bank.
That's right.
Yeah, no, we aren't.
That does trigger something. You know, in my world, in the business world, if you violated the terms of agreement, the whole amount becomes due and payable. So if you guys feel that 20% is fine, that's fine. But it's just my experience has been, if you violate the loan agreement, then the full amount becomes due and payable immediately. And I'll throw it out and I'll take whatever decision y'all make.
No, that's kind of where I think James is going. You mess up, you have to pay it back, and then.
Well, they can pay us 20% if they can't refinance. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to be careful that we don't,
Disincentivize?
well, that or, we've got reinvestment in a building, it's happened, it's not exactly what we want, therefore it triggers the repayment. But if it's
Right.
all at once up front, they may not even be leased up. I mean, I'm not sure what the unintended consequences of that could be. If they had to come up with 150 grand, let's say,
But don't
immediate.
violate the agreement, you'll
Well,
never place yourself in that jeopardy.
I mean, I get
Well,
it.
yeah.
But my thing about that is that, given that the entire project is not going to be complete by the time that 50% threshold is reached, it's going to be really difficult, I think, for staff to be able to check off whether it's actually adhering to what it is that we invested in.
Yeah.
So that's my problem. I don't necessarily disagree, again, that we ought to be checking. I just don't know that a 50% or whatever
in
percent we
progress.
choose is going to actually end up in a result where we can avoid what can just happen if it's all up front.
Yeah.
Well, as
I
one who
really-
has built houses and built buildings, I know that if I had a $200,000 budget, I know when I've expended half my budget.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very measurable event.
Well, and when you've expended half of your budget, that doesn't mean that you have all the things that you said you were going to have there.
Exactly, that they don't
Or
always
even
match
half
up.
of it, yeah.
Yeah, or even half of
right.
it, which is
That's
my
true.
point.
Yeah.
That when they reach 50% of all the money they've spent, their project will not be finished. And so how is our staff going to go in there and say, they did this and everything they said they were gonna do, when they haven't had the money to do it, is
Well,
what
I guess we differ again, because I've constructed milestone charts that says I will be at this point, and this part of the construction will be finished at this point in time for these dollars. I've built houses like that. I will do the interior, I will do the interior trim, I will have the roof put. And
that you
those,
will not have 100% of the project completed.
no, I won't, but I
Right.
will have spent those monies that are allocated to that, and I can prove it to you that that's what, it's.
Yeah, I know
You will.
I know we're getting close, but here, I remembered my question,
We
so.
really got a lot of, I mean, I love the, we'd be happy to bring this
I
back.
know,
I just know we've got.
two more questions that you can either answer later. So we've got under number 5 on page 3, loan will not be subordinate to other investors, which
So we take first position.
absolutely. So then number 6, you say James, you say under certain conditions, the loan may be shared. So we're talking about others being in a second position, not us.
Well, what would be interesting is if they Bancroft their SDC,
Sure.
which we would be the first position, and
Right.
then we have a loan of which we'd be the first position
Right.
again. I think we need to talk about that a little. I mean, so I could see something's going to have to give there, right?
Right.
So are we the first and the second?
Well, as long
You
as
know,
we have
we
security,
have heard from folks, right, that, would we consider
a second
a
position.
second position in order for our finance to work out? So I think that's what we're trying to.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
again, we're not a bank.
Yeah, we're not a bank.
And I don't have a problem so much as us being in a second position under certain circumstances, but that's only with collateral and security. It just can't happen. So I guess we'll take that on a case-by-case basis.
How about we bring this back? We'll
Okay,
take-
yeah, so I think you got
digest all this. I think we're having some
99.9%.
really good conversation
Yeah,
here.
you got 99.9% of what you asked us, so you can move forward with that. Is that good?
I don't recall what raw material suppliers' contracts say as far as where they stand for recovery. They usually publish, and it's been
You
a
mean
long time
liens?
since yeah.
Built construction lien?
Yeah, are they in a primary or secondary? I can't, but at that point, you'll have their material on site, you will have used it, so.
Right. I know for my upgrade to my HVAC, they filed a, builder's lien
Yeah.
on our property, subject to us paying it off, so,
Yeah.
okay.
So you want to bring
We're
it,
good.
want to bring it back?
We'll find a date and bring this back.
Yeah.
We'll clean it up and we can have another
Yeah.
conversation one more time through it.
You want to do one more work session, or you want to bring back something for,
I think work session seems fine. If we're good, then we can just put it on the next agenda and get
okay,
it approved.
all right. All right, we are adjourned.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
come back in a few minutes, because we have the multitudes that need to come into the building.